Welcome back. It's time to get back to hockey. The Calgary Flames will kick off their 2024-25 regular season on Wednesday night in Vancouver when they visit the Vancouver Canucks. And in advance of that, on Monday, the Flames announced their 24-25 season opening roster, 23 active players and one on the injury reserve list. It's a much different group than we've seen from the Flames even just a year ago. And the differences in the roster in a lot of ways sort of illustrate the degree of changes the club has undergone over the last couple seasons, and really the difference in expectations that I think folks have for the group this year, and probably, honestly, probably some hints at how the season could go. So let's just quickly go through the 23-man roster and the injury reserve list, and position by position, goaltenders, defensemen, and forwards. And I think it'll illustrate a few things regarding what I mean about the differences and the changes the team has undergone. All right. Last year, the Calgary Flames goaltenders at opening night were Jacob Markstrom and Dan Vladar. Jacob Markstrom is now a New Jersey Devil, and he's been replaced by Dustin Wolf, last year's third-string goalie who ended up spending a good chunk of the year in the NHL, appropriately enough because of injuries to Jacob Markstrom. So this year's tandem at the NHL level to start, Dan Vladar and Dustin Wolf. Dustin Wolf has been in a lot of circles regarded as the best young goaltending prospect in the National Hockey League, or at worst, part of a handful of really well-regarded tippity-top prospects. And so the hope is that maybe he can take a step forward from last year where he played 17 games and sort of dipped his toe in. And Dan Vladar is coming off of fairly significant hip surgery, and he has had fairly pedestrian numbers the last couple of years, but he's also been dealing with a bum hip. So the hope, I think, throughout Flames management is that Wolf takes a step forward and Vladar kind of gets back to where he was when the Flames originally acquired him, when he was actually quite good. All right, the defense. The defense is much, much different than it was a year ago, to the point where I need to read off a list. Last year, starting defensemen, they had 7 on the active roster and 1 on the injury reserve list. Last year, starting 8 were Rasmus Andersson, Dennis Gilbert, Noah Hanifin, Jordan Osterley, Chris Tanev, Mackenzie Weegar, Nikita Zadorov, and on the IR was Oliver Shillington. Andersson and Weegar are the only ones left. They are joined by Kevin Ball, Tyson Barrie, Jake Bean, Joel Hanley, Danil Miramanov, and Braden Pahal. We've talked a lot about Andersson and Weegar here, there, and everywhere. They're good. They've always been good. They're consistent. They do a lot of things. I think Weegar is still kind of underrated in the league, which is kind of crazy considering how good he is. Kevin Ball, well-regarded. He had great analytics on New Jersey last year, almost as high a goals above replacement, according to Evolving Hockey, as Weegar, on a team that was much like the Flames, kind of iffy at times. So there's some hope for him. Tyson Barrie, power play specialist. Jake Bean, kind of still a work in progress. He hasn't really ever found entirely his pro game, although he's been very good at the AHL level. As an NHLer, he's working on it. Joel Hanley, really good depth defenseman, good 7-8 defenseman, higher up in the rotation, maybe if he has some injuries. Danil Miramanov came over from Vegas in the Noah Hanifin trade. He probably a defensive specialist, but he's shown some two-way promise. He's been playing with Mackenzie Weegar, and Weegar is very good at anchoring some pairings and helping out his defense partners. So Miramanov will get some help there. And last but not least, Braden Pahal. Pahal, defensive specialist, physical, shutdown, kind of mean, gritty depth defenseman. Good on the third pair. I don't know if you want to play him much higher than that, but he's got some nice grit to his game, and on a team that has a lot of sort of guys that play with some finesse, he brings a little bit of meat and potatoes and some smash mouth to him. So from a stylistic standpoint, he's different enough that I think he's unique, and from a practical standpoint, he's a guy who plays a physical game where a lot of your other guys either don't, or given how much they play and the importance to other parts of the team, you might not want them playing that style. So the last year's defense had played together quite a bit. There was some holdovers from that 2022 playoff team. This year's defense hasn't really played a lot together. Andersson and Ball played one preseason game together, for instance. Weegar and Miramanov played maybe 20 games together down the stretch. So they're probably going to be still building some chemistry. Bean and Pahal, played together a little bit in the preseason. So I think this is a group that's going to, gradually find some chemistry, but it might take a little while, and they might look a little bit disjointed to start. Now, the forwards. Again, I need a list. Last year's forwards: Michael Backlund, Blake Coleman, Matt Coronado, Dylan Dubé, Walker Duehr, AJ Greer, Jonathan Huberdeau, Dryden Hunt, Nazem Kadri, Elias Lindholm, Andrew Mangiapane, Adam Ruzicka, Yegor Sharangovich, and on the IR, there was Jacob Pelche and Kevin Rooney. Still here from last year: Backlund, Coleman, Coronado, Huberdeau, Kadri, Sharangovich, and Kevin Rooney. Brand new faces from last year: Sam Honzik, Anthony Mantha, Adam Klapka, Connor Zary, Ryan Lomberg, Martin Pospisil, and Andrei Kuzmenko. That's a lot of new faces, and it's kind of an interesting eclectic mix. A handful of those guys, if Honzik, Klapka, Zary, and Pospisil are new faces. They're guys who are either drafted or found as free agents by the organization, developed through their farm system, and are guys that have sort of done what Brad Treliving used to call the push from below. Whereas Mantha and Lomberg and Kuzmenko are arguably, they're more veteran guys, arguably sort of guys to sort of fill in some gaps in the roster while some of the younger guys develop. You probably don't want to throw, a lineup entirely full of young guys in there. That's not really conducive to the team keeping their head above water in games or the standings or just in general. So you need to have some guys to score some goals in close games and some guys to keep things light during a season that could be a little bit challenging. It's an interesting group. There's a lot of young faces that are growing and learning. Zary Pospisil came into the Flames last year, a month into the season, when, to be blunt, the team was not good in October, and they were basically chasing their tail the rest of the year. But they sort of got some traction in the standings and in general. And part of that was the fact that Zary and Pospisil came in and helped the team sort of get some traction, get some identity, get some, energy. And so I think they're going to be hoping that Honzik and Klapka can help with that. I think they're going to be hoping that Ryan Lomberg, his rambunctiousness can help that. And I think they're hoping that Kuzmenko can keep the power play afloat, because last year when Kuzmenko came in the last quarter of the season, the power play went from being utterly dreadful to being actually kind of good and really fun to watch at times. And so, yeah, they managed to get it going the last 2-3 weeks of the season, but the last 2-3 weeks of the season, they were lights out. And if they can be close to that semi-consistently, they could be really dangerous. And, for a team that, if you look at this list of players, I don't know if you're going to have a lot of guys that you look at and go, holy moly, that guy's going to be their top scorer. They're going to have to do it by committee, and a great way to help them do it by committee is to have a power play that can help them out. So it's a lot of new faces. I think 14 new faces from a year ago. The other interesting thing is the cap flexibility. So a year ago, the Flames began the season over the salary cap. They had 3 players on the injured reserve, including a couple of players on IR. I believe Oliver Shillington was on IR to begin the season. The Flames, in a situation where the salary cap was $83.5 million, they were spending $85.9 million. They were significantly over the salary cap, about $2.4 million over the salary cap. This year, the Flames are spending $69.369 million against the cap to start, on a salary cap of $88 million. So the Flames have just shy of, I think it's about $18.6 million in cap space. And that's a cap spending difference of about $16.6 million from a year ago. And again, we were talking about changes and differences. A lot of the big name potential free agents are playing elsewhere now. Almost all of them are traded. And it's opened up a lot of flexibility for the team contractually. Think of all the new and young faces. If you're a contending team, or a team that, has designs of contending, I don't think you bring in a 19-year-old Sam Honzik to fill in a role to begin the season, but they have the ability now, so I think that's going to be something to watch over the season in terms of, do the Flames maintain their flexibility? Can they keep bringing in young players and cycling them through? They have a handful of players right now who don't need waivers to go up and down. And so, you might see Coronado or Honzik or Klapka rotate through. I'm still not convinced that at some point we're going to see, I'm not going. I'm pretty convinced that we're going to see some of those young defensemen from the Wranglers at some point. So at some point in the nearish future, I wouldn't be surprised if you see some of the defensemen, Joel Hanley in particular, maybe go on waivers to sort of float somebody young up when they have a need to do so. All due respect to Joel Hanley, I think Joel Hanley is the perfect person to waive because I think he gives you that flexibility. So the $16.6 million difference and $18 million in cap space overall, you can do a lot of things with that. And, once Yegor Sharangovich comes back and presumably, maybe Matt Coronado goes down, then the Flames have closer to $19 million, 19 and change in cap space. And again, you can do a ton of things with that over time. And so I wouldn't be shocked if the Flames don't look at doing something maybe closer to the trade deadline, but they're going to be a team I think a lot of teams look at because there's only a handful of teams, I think it's Anaheim, Columbus, and the Flames that have substantial cap space and potentially the wherewithal to use it as a banker to make strategic trades, to help facilitate things. And, if the Flames are willing to get creative, and I think they are willing to get creative, I could think they could do a lot of different things. And a lot of it could depend on how the season goes. On paper, if you look at a handful of players, Dan Vladar in goal, there's some question marks about him, but he's in his last year of his contract. If Dan Vladar turns out to be anything close to what he was his first year in Calgary, there might be a market for that. And maybe you can get something out of that. Give him a chance to play somewhere where the games might be more meaningful. On defense, until, there's always going to be chatter about Rasmus Andersson. I think if you look at the positional needs of the Flames and look at what they have coming, right shot defenseman, you have Uyghur, who's going to be a fixture for years to come. He has that long contract and he seems very enthusiastic about being a Flame long term. Miramanov, he's on a shorter term contract and I think you're still figuring out what he is. But you have some runway on him, and you probably want to figure out what he is. They have, Zane Parekh potentially a year or so away from making a push. Hunter Brzustevich was fantastic in training camp, and I think he went from being someone that folks outside the organization looked at going, will he be able to defend? Will he be any good? How much AHL time will he need to figure out the game? To going, maybe he could be up sooner than they think. So you want to make some room for Parekh and Brzustevich potentially. And I think you want to make some room in the top two pairings. And, with the guys they have, I don't know if you can do all the things that you might want to do and keep Rasmus Andersson long term. So at some point, probably they're going to have to reach a decision point on if he's a long-term part of their core or if he's someone they can use to really address other parts of their roster. Or even just, if you move Rasmus Andersson, he's a really good player. And I think you're going to have a lot of teams, if he becomes available, talk to the Flames and go, okay, this guy's pretty good. Let's get something going here. This could be kind of interesting. So I think that's something to watch. Amongst the forwards, Anthony Mantha is on a 1-year contract. Andrei Kuzmenko is on an expiring contract. I think those are two guys that, if you look at the amount of wingers the Flames in their system long term, they're going to, much like with the right shot defenseman on the wings either side, they're going to need to make some room at some point. Matt Coronado, when the team gets healthy, probably goes down. On paper, at least, he looks like he'll be going down because they have so many wingers. And so if the choice is keeping some guys who are, closer to the apex of their age curve, or, bringing up a spot, opening up a spot for a young guy or a couple of young guys, I think you have to explore that. When they have Jacob Pelche heading down to the Wranglers to get his mojo back, in 20, 30 games, however long it takes, once he gets his swagger back, if he gets his swagger back, you might want to have the opportunity to bring him up and try some stuff out and see how he's going and give him a bit of a reward if that's what happens. And, we're still not talking about, guys like Sam Morton, William Stromgren. There's a lot more that I'm forgetting, but they have a lot of guys that they're going to potentially want to give some space to. And they have the cap space to bring up these guys, but you're going to need roster spaces at some point. And depending on, if these guys keep going and keep pushing from the Wrangler side of things and from within their system, you're gonna have to start making some of those kind of decisions. So I don't think Craig Conroy has nearly the amount of headaches potentially in terms of guys you have to move with the ticking clock, because outside of maybe Mantha and Kuzmenko and maybe Vladar, I don't think you have a lot of guys who are on definitively expiring deals that you might have to make a decision on by March 7th when the trade deadline hits. But I also think, they probably want to be proactive on some of these things. And if they have guys they would like to make space for, they would like to make space for them. So that's something to watch. I think this is going to be a fascinating season. I don't think the Flames are going to be anywhere near as bad as people seem to think they will be. I don't think going to be, for lack of a better term, I don't think they're going to be James Hagen's bad. But I also don't think they're going to be playoff good. I think they're going to be a absolute pain in the ass team to play against for much of the season, because I think they have they might lack high end stars, but I think they have a lot of depth throughout the roster, and I think especially if the blue line could find some chemistry and coalesce a bit, I think they could be a team that really gives their opposition a tough night at the office. So it's going to be a fascinating season. It kicks off Wednesday in Vancouver. The Flames have their home opener on Saturday night against the Philadelphia Flyers at the Dome, and then they play Edmonton on Sunday. It's going to be a fascinating season because the last couple of years there was the question marks. There was the how are Huberdeau and Kadri and Weegar going to replace the guys they're replacing? And then last year it was, oh no, they got 7 UFAs, and of course they moved to Foley before the season, so it was, oh no, they got 6 UFAs, what are they going to do? And the UFA question mark last year and the are they rebuilding, are they not question was hanging in the air the whole season. I don't think there's that question this year. This is a team that's building something and wants to be building something. They're building something, a block and a half north of Scotia Place, and I think they want to at the same time parallel paths. They want to build a hockey team that's worthy of playing in that building and being something that people will be excited to see come 2027. And so, this is going to be a year that's, there might be some tough nights at the office, but I think, it feels like they're committed to the process. And I think they're also committed to trying to be better than people think they're going to be. And again, I don't think that manifests in a 14-15 find a way Flames way. I don't think they're going to end up above the cut line, but I think they're going to make teams that are trying to get above that cut line, trying to stamp their playoff tickets, I think they're going to try to make their nights miserable every time they have the situation to do so. So, like I said, it's going to be a fascinating year. Thanks for clicking and watching. If you like this video, please click like. If you really like this video, please click subscribe. Please feel strongly encouraged to comment and share. And if there's another topic or kind of video you want to see me make, please let me know in the comments or on social media. And I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.